Once again, we gather in search of the truth, dark, and mystery. It's the Drunk Turkey Show.
Big development today in the investigation into the murders of 4 University of Idaho students. According to state and local officials and court documents, 28-year-old Brian Christopher Koberger has been arrested. He was arrested and arraigned this morning in Pennsylvania.
We have new details on what Brian Koberger was doing right before his arrest. Police says a tactical team burst in to arrest the Idaho murder suspect. He was in pajamas and latest gloves, stuffing trash into Ziploc bags.
Hey, greetings from the year 3000. It still sucks. This is Phil J. Pride, and you're listening to the Drunken Turkey Show. Your one stop for this sort of thing. Hit that button, like and subscribe. You know what to do, just like every other podcast.
Just like every other podcast. What is up, everybody? Welcome back to the DT Show or the Drunk Turkey Show, however you prefer. I'm Daniel, and tonight we're going back into the Nancy Guthrie abduction. We're going to talk about a timeline that I think, and I'm pretty positive, is off. And I think it was off on purpose. We're going to talk about that and the reasons why, etc. I have a special guest tonight, former CSI investigator, Steve from the channel True Crime Web. Let's bring him on. How's it going, Steve? How are you doing, my man?
I'm doing fine, sir. Thank you for having me. It's an honor.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. It's always fun to have you on. It's always great insight. Your insight's always great, especially coming in from aside from the forensic avenue, and doing these tests to determine certain things like what we're going to determine tonight, which is the timeline. Before we get into it, like what made you look at the video of the suspect and think that maybe there is something off with the timeline?
Well, I really didn't know that the timeline was off until I gave you, I was looking at and doing some research, and when as the video that you was really focusing on of him approaching from the left side of the driveway, that when he comes up to that walkway right before he goes through the arch, we have a very crisp shadow across that walkway. And I know, and I really focused on that shadow, and with the understanding that you can tell time with solar shadows and from the sun, and so you can also do it with a lunar, because we have historical records of, and we know exactly moon positioning. And on a full moon night, we have a very crisp cast off and shadow and angle that goes across that walkway. And in my slideshow, I seized this image about where you're at right now. And there's certain things about that we had to determine is how wide is that walkway, and take the information of how wide the walkway is approximate by using those tiles and having supporting evidence of the width of those tiles. It gave us a walkway that's about 4 foot wide. And then we take what the FBI says that his height is, and putting in different heights, different variables. I was able to come up with a certain timeline. And when I told you that time, you looked at me and said, that's an impossibility, because of that's not that it was an impossibility, but that it was the timeline says it was much earlier than what my time estimate was. And so that's what kicked us off to tonight.
Yeah. Well, I mean, technically it should be an impossibility if the camera goes off at 1:48, as Sheriff NANOS indicated, then it should. This is some of the work, before we get into that, this is some of the work you did to try to figure out the height of the perpetrator. And this was mostly your work. This was all you here. I helped out a little bit. What I did here was I extended the bricks. You see that on the right side here, guys? That was the extension of my work. Steve did the rest. But we're trying to figure out how tall he is. Now, there's an image here that shows him standing straight up, and I lined it up with the top of his head so that we can see where the bricks are, and so that way we can kind of figure out, height here based off of the bricks. And when you did that, what did you come up with when you were looking at just his stance next to the bricks?
Well, and that's the thing is that even when we have him standing straight up, he is on two levels. One leg's on the lower level and one leg's up. And determining height is very, very, there's so much in there that just a few pixels can cause anything. But I think that I believe the FBI puts him at his greatest height around 5'10". And I wouldn't put him any shorter than 5'10", and maybe even closer to 6 or just over 6. And that's just my guess, or my best guess with what the I've looked at. And some of the variables I put in there put the height all the way up to 6'2" or just over 6'2". It just depends exactly the camera angle. And now if we were able to put that camera back and
recreate it
there with a similar build, we could probably come up with, and they may have done that. I don't know, but everything I have says that he's at least 5'10". He could be as tall as 6'2" or a little bit above.
And whoa, went a little bit too far. And so here's the let me get this straight, because it's not. 1 second, y'all. Let me get this going. Okay, slideshow. There it is. And so this is the presentation that you had created so that we can figure out height. Now, when I was going through this, or time, the first thing says FBI described the suspect as a 5'9" to 5'10" average build, as you just mentioned. The very next image here, what are we looking at, Steve? What's I'm assuming, on the right, the yellow circle or with the bold black around it is the moon. Is that right?
Yes. You can go online and you look up. There's a lot of different apps out there and databases, whereas you can enter different measurements, and you take those measurements, like this measurement here that you enter in this individual 72. That one of the variables I went from a greater height than what on my estimation of what the maximum height would be to what the minimum height could be. And so anywhere from 6'2" all the way down to, or 6 foot in this case, all the way down to, I think my shortest case estimate was 5'4", as far as including all variables. Because every time you change the height of the individual to the shadow cast off, it changes the time somewhere around, for every inch, 1 to 2 minutes of the time variable of when that shadow was cast. And but you can go online. This one here, it has known position, historical, scientific, whatever the doctrine is, protocols for of what the angle of the moon and the location of the moon at any one time is. And you enter in the exact location, enter in your estimated height of an object, and then enter in the length of the estimated length of the shadow, and it gives you a specific time of when that shadow could be created.
And when you'd put all that together, what time did you come out with based on his height?
Well, on this individual here, if you look at the bottom, as we go through these slides, you have this here is 68 inches, 5'8". So if you put in the 68 inches or the 1.27 meters and put in the shadow length, which I estimated at 40, we'll go back to the shadow in a minute, and I'll tell you the reasoning of why I went with the sustained width of the shadow of on that walkway. But and when you enter those in, this one here, it looks like it came out. My eyes are not real good right now. At 2:18 in the morning, which is about 30 minutes or 30 something minutes later than what you said the timeline of when the camera went offline or something, correct?
Yeah, the camera went offline according to NANOS at 1:48 a.m., which would make this impossible if he's walking up on the steps at 2:18, 2:15. If he's walking up on the steps at around that time, the camera's already disconnected, unless Nanos is lying about that, which there might be reasons to that, and we'll talk about it. One of the things that I remembered before we got on the show was that there was a Kia Soul that was seen in the area around a certain time that law enforcement really quickly said, no, it's not involved. And I'm wondering if it's because it doesn't match with the real timeline. You know what I'm saying? And it doesn't, you know, that's why they discredited it so quickly. And so at 69, so that was at 5'8". So this is 5'9". What time is this?
It changed it to what is that, 216 at the top? The second line right under the address right there.
216. And then if he's 5'11", it's 214. Yeah. Now you verified this. I'm assuming this is what I'm seeing at when I look at this image here, is to create this is at 214.
Yeah, I went to, of course, go to Google Earth, and you have the lay of the residence, and I just brought that over. Then I oriented the individual walking to parallel that, and then and of course, slope and angle of terrain can have a impact on a cast off shadow. And so typically walkway will be falling away from the residence. So you have a minimum slope, but you'll have certain fall because you don't want your house to be all the water when it rains run to your house. You have it running away. So everything tends to flow away from the residence. So you'll have a little drop. But trying to calculate and include all those variables and setting the parameters so that you minimize the mistake of time estimate.
And so, but so it's your, though, based on this, like, because it looks like you kind of lined up, all right, for the shadow to be at this angle based on the moon's positioning. For him to be,
falls within it. Yeah, it still falls within those variables.
So it's 214, and at 214, that's 70 inches. That's what, 5'10"?
Yes.
Yeah.
And so and that's what I'm saying is that even if you look at, you have his shadow, but if you look at the shadow on that pot or flower pot that's behind him all the way at the end, that you can see that it's kind of angled more forward, such as what I have. You see what I'm saying? That you can see the angle of the shadow a little bit.
Yeah, I see that.
It's longer on this side, which means that which way is it angled? Best I can tell. But like I said, all you're doing is everything I got puts it 210 and later. Now, could we be off a few minutes? Yes. I mean, do I think I'm off 30 minutes? All my testing that I've done in my backyard on full moons, I'm within 3 to 5 minutes on different surfaces, different angles. I'm always within 3 to 5 minutes. And I think you had some supporting someone else that checked this and came up at 2 o'clock also, I believe.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. So last night I was talking with Chris McDonough from the interview room. If you haven't checked out that interview before we went on, you know, I asked him, I was like, hey, you know, I have this very compelling pieces of information and evidence that indicate that the timeline is most likely wrong, that the time in which the perpetrator's walking up there is a little bit later. And before I could tell him the time, he's like, yeah, it's a little bit after 2 a.m. And I was like, yeah, how did you know? And he told me he did something very similar to what you did. Now, I don't know if he's put it out there or not. So forgive me, Chris, if I said that before you were ready to say it, but he may have already put that out there, because I think some folks had been indicating, and I kind of heard this too, that somebody was saying, what if he put the camera back on, and he's walking up there later, and maybe that's what people are assuming. I don't think that would be the case. Do you?
Well, I mean, it's pretty easy to build a cloaking device. You can use aluminum foil, and you can test this on your phones. If you got Find My Phone, you wrap it with aluminum foil, it'll kill it instantly. So I would imagine that. I haven't tested it on a camera, but that would probably be a pretty good test for anyone that has this camera. Is take it off, wrap it with aluminum foil, or just even leave it on the wall mount and see if you could cover it with aluminum foil and see if it kills the signal. I mean, law enforcement has so much more information than us. They may have said, I mean, this camera could have gone on and off several times. We just don't know.
Interesting. Yeah, I mean, it could have. I mean, if he did put it back on, that would scream that this is obviously even more staged than what it is, and I think that would kind of lead us to believe to a certain extent of quite a few other things. But let's go off of the premises that he once he removed it and he shut it off, or he did whatever it is that he did with it, that he didn't put it back on. I don't think law enforcement is going to see. We've wondered about this whole time frame, right? The time frame in which the camera turns off, and the time frame in which Nancy's pacemaker disconnects from her phone. It's a long time. What's he doing in there? I wouldn't think of that. I doubt that law enforcement is going to say, all right, well, we know that there was a 50 minute time frame that he was in the house, and so what we're going to do is we're just going to move everything. So what I think they did was is extend the timeline earlier to 140 something, because I guess they're assuming that the person may have been driving around anyways, and that you're going to catch them on their cameras. But I don't think you would prolong the time that he left, meaning, like, if he was there for 50 minutes and he showed up at 2:00 and he was there till 3:00, I would struggle with law enforcement going in there and saying, no, he was only there from 1:48 to 2:30, because now you have 30 minutes there that you're screwing up, like tips and things of that nature, people looking out and things like that. And so my assumption is, if this is accurate, which I strongly suspect it is, that what they did was they just extended the timeline and left the time frame in which he left the same, meaning that he was in the house a much shorter time frame than we think. Does that make more sense given how long he had and what he was probably doing? I mean, if you put yourself in the scenario, there's probably stress, anxiety, and a bunch of things going on through his head. Did anybody hear anything? Did somebody awake? Is there a dog barking, etc.? He's probably going to want to get out of there fast.
Depends on how much control he has. Everything's with control. If there's alerts out and things are starting to go south, then of course you become rushed and you make mistakes. But if he's in absolute control and he has controlled it from the moment he's got there, and he knows that no 911 hasn't been contacted, she was unable to contact or hit any type of personal alarms, and he was able to surprise her and get absolute control, then time is on his side. It's when you have that control that allows that. And so he could have stayed as long as he wanted to until the next morning when law enforcement arrived. And so it's when you lose control, that's when the clock really kicks in. But you still don't want to expose yourself to some random occurrence, because the longer you stay with a victim, in the view of the public, where you don't control all the eyes and all the angles and all the viewpoints, and once he leaves that resident or he takes her out of there, he's exposing himself and her to being seen together. And that occurs forever how long it took him to get to a secure second location. And where is that second location? It's going to be somewhere that he absolutely controls once again.
Yeah. Yeah. And I have some questions for you about the direction that they may have left. Because Chris found some interesting things about the blood, and I want to get your opinion on. But before that, what kind now if you were in charge of this investigation and you were giving out information to the public so that they can check their cameras, I mean, the move of giving wrong information seems a little desperate, don't you think?
Well, you never want to narrow it to the point, because there's a lot of things that have to occur that you don't want people to just looking at their camera and saying the only important information is within this 30 minutes. Why, it could be very critical, but you want that, okay, we know that at a certain time he arrived, but we don't know how long he stayed outside that residence and waited. He could have been outside that residence the whole time that she was over at the family having supper. He could have been hidden in the shadow for hours. You know, stakeouts are stakeouts. Doesn't matter if you're a bad guy or a good guy. You don't know that time frame, and you'll sit there for hours. And, you know, he may have approached even earlier. We just don't know what law enforcement knows. And, but we do know that at this time frame, he exposed himself. And why did he wait to this specific time frame? Is it because he did surveillance and he knew that, well, certain people may come into their residences, they may arrive home, and lights are out at this time of night? I mean, there's so many things about that, whatever information and collection of data that he had during his stalking and gathering that data of when is the time to strike. Because if he's highly organized, he would figure all that out and only go when everything was in his total control and benefit him the most, and would be the least risk to him. You know, that's how criminals operate. They don't go in, they don't want to do high risk time frames or high risk acts, because, you know, it doesn't work out for them in the long run. So they minimize the dangers to themselves. And so he could have been there for several hours before and had picked this sort of one perfect time that this is the time I want to act. And we won't know that until we talk to him eventually, which I think they will talk to him eventually. Hopefully sooner than later.
I hope so. So, you know, you bring up an interesting point that they don't really know like when it was that he arrived there.
Yeah. So you don't want to narrow it down that, oh, we're only looking for cars from 2 o'clock or 1 o'clock or 12 o'clock. He could have got there at 8 o'clock previous day.
But we do know when they left based on the phone disconnecting from the heart rate monitor. So that information, do you want that to be inaccurate? Because that's the time where you have people looking at their cameras, that, you know, her heart rate monitor disconnected or her pacemaker disconnected from her phone. If you know that for a fact that that's the time that occurred, is that the information you want to give wrong? And if it's not, then all this means is that he was probably in the house a lot shorter of a time frame than what we expect. Correct?
Yeah. If he was in the residence more than an hour, I would be shocked. If he's in the residence more than 30 minutes, I would think that he's in the residence, that once he decided to make contact, and once contact was made, I think everything occurred within a 30-minute time frame once he decided to act.
Mm-hmm. And, you know, the one thing that had bothered me about this was the fact that, according to sources, and we got to take source information with a grain of salt, because we don't know who exactly it's coming from and where the information is coming from. But there wasn't any sign of an assault per se inside of the house, outside of the blood that was going from the entrance of the doorway outside that we can see. You know, and then Brian Ensign also mentioned that somebody had said that some of the parts of the house was immaculate, was clean, not cleaned. You know, I thought maybe he had time to go back in or some of that nature, but more I think about it now, it's probably very quickly. And I don't know. I just think that it'd be very dangerous to say that the vehicle left at 2:28 a.m. or at least that the pacemaker disconnected from the phone at that time, alluding to that's the time frame in which that the perpetrator had left, and hope that that doesn't affect your tips. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Now,
I see there's people are wanting to get that website, and I'll send you a link so that if you want to put it in the description, we'll do that for you. Okay.
I appreciate that. Yes, sir. We'll do that. We'll do that. Hey, what's going on, Sleuth Nation and the Sleuth Intuition? Sorry about that. How's it going, my man? Good to see you again. So here's my thought process. If they're doing this, if he's going out there giving false information to the public, uh, there's only one or a few reasons why you would do that, especially when it comes to the timeline, which I think the timeline is kind of important when you have an unsolved crime and you're hoping the public can come up with something for you, like a tip. That tells me there's not a lot there, and they're holding a lot of things close to the vest. And that if somebody were to come forward, high profile crime, I wouldn't be surprised if somebody confesses to this and it's not real, especially if this prolongs and goes longer. If this is something that goes on, like, the little girl, the John Benet Ramsey case, a lot of people falsely confessed to that case, because it was a high profile crime and it was in the news and they wanted to get their name out there. And this is a quick way to become a celebrity. It may not be the best or the smartest way of doing it, but it's a quick way to do so. And so I think they're wanting to hold some things close to the vest so that way they can ask, especially what time did you arrive? What time did you walk up there? If somebody keeps saying, "Oh yeah, it was at 1:45 or 1:40," then you kind of know that the person is probably not being truthful. But that tells me there's not a lot there because I would have assumed that maybe you have something inside the house that you can say, "All right, what did you knock down, or did you knock down anything? Was anything disturbed in any of the other rooms, etc." Something that only the person that committed this crime would know. And if they're holding this information behind, it must mean that they don't have very much, at least at that time. Now,
Yeah.
do you agree?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, because the longer you stay in there, the more interactions you have. What do they have? I mean, this individual knows things about that house. And when did he become familiar with it? There's so much we don't know about this case, and how many times had he been there? How many times had he been in the residence? I mean, is this the first time he's ever went in the residence? Who knows?
Yeah. It may not be. I mean, I don't know. My assumption is just kind of changing of the plan. And I still think that plans were changed. I don't, especially if the time frame is a little bit shorter. Right. If the time frame is now, he arrives there or he makes entry after 2:14 and is out of there by 2:28. I mean, that's what, 14 minutes or so. So, I'm not seeing, a guy that's going back in and staging some things like the back door being propped open. The back door being propped open probably was the entry and potential exit point. Do you agree?
Yeah. And I think someone said that dog, possibly a neighbor's dog, alerted and was barking. And so if the back door was open and there's something, and if he was parked elsewhere other than in front, and he was approaching from where you think he parked at,
Mm-hmm.
something had to change his course of action. Something had to change his plans of going out the back door, and we have to go out the front door now. Is that because he thought he saw some movement in a house next door? Did a light come on next door, or was there a car passing by, or was there some activity or from dog or otherwise? But something changed him, that if he opened that back door, propped it open, what changed him from going back out the way he came in if your synopsis about him entering the back is correct. And what changed him from going out the easiest way? And there has to be a reason for it. And it has to be something that put him at a great risk of, if I go out that back door, I'm at a higher risk of being detected versus let's go through this front door.
Yeah, that's what I've been thinking and wondering, man, is like, because something had to significantly change for his plan to change. And I'm assuming it has to do with the mobility aspect. Trying to get her to go all the way through the house. I think maybe he felt it could have been quicker to go through the front. Now, we'll bring up this real quick, and I'm glad we're going to go into that because it's about some blood. your specialty here. Let's see. Let me pull up the right stuff real quick. So remember that video that we have? Let me pull that video that I showed you with the blood drops that are coming from Nancy's house, and it goes all the way down towards the driveway. Mm-hmm. So Chris had pointed out a couple of things with the blood yesterday that I honestly can't answer or don't know anything about. So I was like, I'm going to bring my buddy Steve on and get his opinion from it. So he mentioned that, like, here, and this is getting counted towards the driveway, you have what looks like an L-shaped blood mark. Do you see that? What causes
that is blood? That? If that is blood, blood don't normally flow that way. And is it more of a transfer versus for an elongated blood droplet to occur? And that's the thing with rough surfaces. When blood hits a rough surface, it has a different dispersion than if it's a slick surface. If you drop a blood drop onto a window, smooth, perfect pane of glass, you're going to have if it's 90 degrees, it's going to fall. It's going to go into a almost perfect circle with satellites coming off of it, and be extremely uniform. When you have things that are on rough surface, blood will bounce and spray and travel in different directions. I don't know how large this pebble is, so there's a lot of things that can happen here. And that's the problem when you have rough surfaces, that blood will react. But it's still, if you look at these other blood droplets, you see if those are blood droplets, and I don't know what's blood and what's not, because it's extremely, but that's a very distinct pattern when you have that L. And that makes no sense to me of being a single blood drop that would do that in such a manner. Could it be a transfer of something off some type of surface? Possibly. It make more sense of that versus being 2 or 3 drops falling 5 feet and making contact with each other. Extremely difficult to do for anyone that's injured, or, even if you held out a droplet or something to let blood come under gravity and break away, it'd be extremely hard to have the accuracy to drop one blood droplet onto the other. So I think that's more of if that is blood, more of some type of transfer, my opinion.
Now, if it is a transfer, there's quite a bit of large drops here. I mean, if this is 4 inches wide across here, these are some pretty hefty drops here. They're pretty close together. You think she's standing there for a period of time, or do you think she's bleeding that heavily?
If that's a cluster of individual droplets, we're there, and the flow's no greater than, what we see up, there's more time spent there for some reason.
Yeah. It seems like they stopped there.
One thing you can have that's here that say that there is a saturated surface. and someone flicks their hand or flicks their arm, and you can have a multitude of simultaneous cast off. Could that be that cluster? Yes, it could be something like that off of the hand, versus individual blood droplets falling from a single, like if you have blood flow, and all of us have seen blood, from a busted nose, lip, or it'll run a certain course, certain path. It'll have a collection point, and then it'll break away once it gets its surface tension gets to a certain size, and it breaks away, unless you have something that's collecting that blood, and then you say that you had your hand cupped or over your nose or your mouth, and now you have some type of a collection of saturation in your hand, and then you just cast it off. You could get something more along those lines of something like that occurring.
But something like that happening, I mean, we've thought that, and you're the one that brought it up, and I agree with you, that she may have been restrained because there's not a handprint. There's not like an outline of a handprint in the aspirated blood cough, that she was close to the ground, so possibly restrained. Now, I think we've all seen the pictures of her. She's got some pretty crazy bruises on her arms from whatever she may be going through medically. Could she be suffering? I mean, when you look at the blood drops here, do you think that this could be more than one injury? Could this be her coughing up something and also bleeding from the hand? Or is this not enough blood for that?
Now, are you talking about here the rug?
All of it, like the way you. So we have like blood that's leaving.
What I see at this scene here, I see the expirated blood that we have just to the right of the mat. I see at least one cough, or a simple cough of expirated blood there. And then I see movement of blood collecting and falling away as we have movement from the door traveling outward. Mm-hmm. And it's not a real fast move. And if it's not, it depends on the flow rate of the blood and the injury. How fast is the blood dropping? What is the collection point? Where is it falling from? Is it that we have our hands at the elbow and it's running down our arm and dropping off an elbow as we leave the residence? Or is it from someone that's leaning forward and it's coming off their chin? And we just don't know all the circumstances and the possibility. But it's not, it's not only do you have blood droplets moving away from the door, but you have width to it. Mm-hmm. And if you look at the width of that, you see, and so if it's a single point, then we have to have somebody that's unsteady moving not only away from the residence, but from left to right, right to left as they come off that porch. See what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah, no, I get you. So because of the width, it's either they're wobbling, which given the injury, that's possible, or they could be.
And if we're wobbling coming slow, then, and it's a minor injury, such as a busted nose or a busted lip, versus something that's extremely, it just depends, the type of injury and sustained blood flow. Because for this many blood drops, we have to have some exposure and some type of injury that allowed a consistent feeding for these blood drops to form and break away and fall. And we have width plus distance. And that means that we're not moving at a fast pace.
No, you're right. Hey, look, I think that looks like a footprint there.
It could be. It depends on what's blood and what's not, because everything you see on this thing, it has a red cast to it. And so I would love to get there and on dark night and luminol the devil out of this place, because what could you see on those tiles that we're not able to see unless we have it enhanced and some type of chemical introduced? And hopefully law enforcement's done that. Hopefully they went back and treated this walkway, because it's not going to disappear. Whatever's there on the transfer of blood, it's still there. You can go up there and hit it with luminol and it's there.
Oh yeah. Do you see, based on what we've seen from the scene, do you see evidence that they've used luminol in the scene?
You can't. I don't see anything that shows. Sometimes with luminol, there is a whitish byproduct of when it dries. I don't see any of that yet, but there's a lot of different chemicals they could use, and I don't know what it looks like now, and I don't know what if they used any, and what have they collected, and have they washed it off? I just don't know.
Well, in the Brian Koberger case, they showed some images of the crime scene and some of the stuff that they used for the blood to pull it up, and there was like a bluish blackish substance on everything. What is that? Is that amino
Bluish
black?
black, is probably amino black or something.
And is that how does that different than luminol?
There's different proteins, and like luminol works with off the iron in your blood, and but there's different. Some chemicals may work on salt of different things, and you're going way back into my training of what my memory is, and I can't give you all the chemicals. I was exposed to that, but I'm not the person. That's above my pay grade.
So here, this is that one footprint that we saw that was matched kind of what we had seen over there by the
repeat. I wouldn't say a footprint, but a repeat pattern.
And then just not that far away is this.
Yeah. And
does that look like just what normally would happen with, if this is blood? Is this
you got another L there, and is that part of that other L? See what you see? See that top?
Oh, that's true. There is an L there.
And
could that be like a pant leg? Like if she's wearing pajamas?
It could be any type of blood saturated surface. I mean, it could be anything that a transfer can. But we don't know where the key source for this to occur. We have to have that we've stepped in blood somewhere. If this is a shoe print, where is that? Where did we first step into it? And why don't we continuously step into these blood droplets and have more patterns? We just don't see that.
No, I mean, that's
that's the importance of going there and looking at this crime scene and using these tools. That, and I'm hoping they have done that, and they've used all the tools in their toolbox and went in there and processed that walkway, because it'd be of great importance to see if there is shoe impressions, because just because you don't see it here doesn't mean that there's not absolutely identifiable shoe patterns, that if they were properly treated with the proper chemicals, that it would just blow up and shine. You remember on the Koberger case, Mrs. Steve and I did some testing, and we sent to you about how far you could track shoes. And it was 120, 140 feet that you quit seeing any repeat patterns after, I think, 50 or 60 feet. But then you could double that when you enhanced it and treated it with some reactive chemical, you could see those shoe prints for another 60 feet. And that would be the importance of that.
Wow. Yeah, and I really do hope they did that. I'm assuming that they did that.
And it's not too late now. If it's dry blood, it's still there.
It's still there. You still can do that.
Yeah,
Interesting.
yeah. It's pretty hardy.
Interesting. I'm gonna pull up this image that I just took of the entire thing real quick.
But and the importance of shoe prints are this. Let's say that okay, you only have that if you go there and you look at the tracks, you may find that we have our victim's footprints, which you would expect, and then you may see that we have a different footprint. So now we have what we put as the victim's footprints, and we put what we have as one offender. But then you find a different shoe print. Now we know the number. We start building that. Oh, we have more than one offender, because typically you don't wear two different shoes, one brand on left foot, one brand on right foot. Not saying it's impossible not to, but you just typically wouldn't have that. And that's the importance of going in there and understanding and looking for that footwear patterns with all the tools, because that could tell you exactly how many people were on this front porch and on that walkway.
I agree. Now, looking at this is the potential print. That's the pattern that we were talking about. There's another one right here. I mean, it's relatively close. And then this one is something that, if it's blood, does that look like that could be done with just gravity, or is that something that's either transferred or print? Is that an unnatural blood?
That's unnatural. That's not. We're on. You can see the other blood droplets are circular, whereas these are not. They're elongated. They have long angles. Now, can you create long angle blood droplets? Yes, but they have to be cast off at a very low level. But you can see these other round droplets, and then you have those elongated, and that's what you look for. What caused that different blood pattern?
Now, if these are footprints, would you say that that's three prints there from the same foot?
If it is, it's a very short stride.
That's what I'm thinking too. Now,
I mean, you're only taking 12-inch steps, because those tiles, if those tiles are correct in our measurements of, I think 11 3/4 to 12-inch tiles, from our best estimates, from looking at the door and looking at those bricks, and which are all supporting that these are 12-inch tiles. That if those are all from the same footprint, we're basically making 12-inch steps
with the same foot, so it's not even,
or the same. I mean, is it some cane or something? I mean, what are we shuffling with?
Right. Do you think this if this is a shoe print, let's go off of that. Do you think this is Nancy's or the suspect's?
It could be either or, for the fact that if you're attempting to manage and anything with weight, human nature, we take shorter steps. The more the load is, the more center of gravity, and it could be either or. You can't just rule out that it's a senior citizen's footstep. It could be bad guys. That's under extreme, he's having to support a lot of weight. And is that possible? Yeah. But
trying to carry her, pick her up.
Yeah. And holding her up and going at their rate. If she's traveling at a certain speed and you're managing her at whatever speed she's leaving the residence at, you're having to step there. And all of us have walked with our grandmothers and grandfathers, and as we hold their arms, we go at the same rate, and we take shorter steps. We don't take those long steps. Whatever whoever we're assisting, we take the same stride as they do.
Now, if it's not a shoe print, you think it could be a cane?
It could be a cane, walking stick, something of that. And it could even be, I can't think. if you had a trolley wheel, but you would see it. You see what I'm saying? That
Yeah.
if each of those are at identical distances, then you're looking at something that came in contact with blood that is more like some type of wheel or a walker or something of that.
It's an interesting point. I would say I don't think it's the same distance because this one here is about halfway on the tile to where this one isn't. And when you look at this, it's much further away. It's almost to the full length of the tile. But if it was the same, you're absolutely right. It would be indicative of it being on a spot that's spinning in a circle. Interesting. Now, real quick, back to what we were looking at earlier. Let me pull it up real quick. Well, there's two of them that I want to show you. But back to this. Could this L shape be made because they decided to turn this way?
It depends on what that is from. I mean, if it's a shoe, we just don't know the pattern of the shoe.
Mm-hmm.
We don't know because you go into your closet and look at your shoes, and every tennis shoe or every boot has a different pattern to it. And that's the importance that we really need up on those tiles and even on this walkway. Man, it needs to be processed, and hopefully CSI processed it correctly.
I hope so.
I mean, they didn't take the mat, so why would they process it correctly? I'm sorry.
I don't disagree with you, and the only thing that we've seen is this white tent that went up, and the white tent was it was just at the residence. It wasn't anywhere. I mean, at the front, it wasn't. I think I have a picture of it somewhere here. It was just at the entrance. It wasn't all the way down the sidewalk, and I would assume, and here it is. I would assume that. Well, here's the thing. So if he was coming down this way and he turned here, I don't understand where he would be going just to come all the way back around here.
And there should be more blood. I mean,
yeah.
If you bled to there,
yeah,
there's more blood.
Yeah, I agree. That's true. Yeah, I struggle with them turning this way. I was looking at it from like Google Earth as well. And this is what I was showing here. I was like, if you continue this path, you're eventually going to get to a part where you have to turn back this way. Like you can't continue this way. I mean, you're not going nowhere. And at her age and the way she's walking, I mean, unless you're trying to exit way over here, I don't see that. I mean, the only path you have going this way is to come back around this way, and you just end up right here. It's way easier to go this way with somebody who's already having some mobility issues, already bleeding, injured, things of that nature. We have a question for you. Do you think the perp wiped the shoe on the mat, explaining why only one shoe print?
And that's a good point, Don. And I do think that the blood source for whatever shoe, if that is a shoe transfer, I think more than likely it came off of that mat. I think that's where there's a pool of blood that we don't see, has to be somewhere. And more than likely it's on that mat. I really do believe that's the case. Now, could the offender had a saturation of a blood transfer onto their shoe from a soaked hand or making contact with their shoe to the injury? It's possible, because we don't know how the injury occurred. Is it from a kick? I hate to even go down that route, but there is that possibility that, to gain control, anyone that's been in any type of violent encounter, not everything comes from fist.
That's true. That would be, I mean, this whole thing's unfortunate, but you can't put it past, if some guy's willing to take an 84-year-old woman out of their house, you know, without her medication.
Oh,
Obviously,
he
if
has no
something
empathy. No,
yeah,
I mean, you
exactly.
don't. Yeah, this we're not looking at a normal individual. We're looking at someone that is narcissistic and only cares about their freedom, their control, and how they're going to benefit and satisfy whatever drove their for this crime to be committed. Whatever that driving force is, they satisfied it through these acts, and whatever the motive is, and it had nothing to do with the victim. It all about them and their control.
I agree. I mean, you know, according to Jen Coffin, former FBI agent, I'm actually going to be on her channel here in about 30 minutes or so. You know, talking about the case again. She said, and she broke some information to me that I wasn't aware of, that because when the ransom letters, notes, emails, whatever they were, came out to TMZ, it was just reported when TMZ got it, which was, I think, Monday, which was 3 days later. And so a lot of people were like, you know, why would they wait 3 days, et cetera, et cetera. But according to Jen's sources, local media got the emails the next day and then the day after that. And then when they didn't put out the information, that's when it went to TMZ. TMZ didn't put it out either, but they spoke about it. And so they got a second one, I think, or at least, you know, they got another one. And then it ceased. And to me, I thought, you know, at first I was like, man, anybody could just probably Google search a bunch of different things. They'll end up finding something. And then, you know, use that. Oh, you know, she had a floodlight in the back, or, you know, the house had X amount of bedrooms, whatever the case may have been. But from one day to the next, that's good. That I mean, it's still plausible, but I think it'd be kind of tough. And if they had something that made law enforcement go and question the Guthries about it, and the Guthries feel that it was legit, you know, the first two, I think that might mean something. And to me, there's only one case, I think, and that was the Charles Lindbergh, his son abduction, where that went through the media. Outside of that, I mean, I'm not familiar with any other cases that a ransom was sent to the media or anything like that. I've seen media or at least taunting of law enforcement by use of the media or other means when you have cases where you have somebody who's a psychopath, a narcissist, a Ted, maybe Ted Bundy, but more so like a Zodiac or BTK. If the person did contact the media the very next day, how does that make you? What does that tell you?
Well, if it is immediate media contact, then it changes, and it puts it more towards it is financially based. That, you know, if it's and the sheriff from day one has said that, if I ain't mistaken, that it was not a random burglary, it was a abduction. And when you look at this here, with this, if this is the end of the blood trail and we have no more blood after this, this is a very strong indicator that what happened at this moment in time. Do we have a second suspect that came up there instantly, and we have two offenders now that are picking her up and rapidly moving them off of the scene? Because if this is the end of the blood trail, what changed here? And there has to be something that changed if this is the end of the blood trail.
Well,
and it had to happen rapidly. And what can happen rapidly that from this point on, do we have reinforcements that showed up? But something had to occur there that changed the blood droplets, that we moved for 20 to 30 feet and we have a sustained blood drop trail, and then it changes. What happened at the moment it changed? Is that supporting evidence that we have another individual?
It's possible. You know, the whole two people person, I don't discredit it that it couldn't have happened. I just feel when you have multiple people start talking, you know, those type of things. one of the thought processes that maybe perhaps this person isn't alive. Maybe the second person took him out or some of that nature. I don't know if there's any evidence of that. I think then we would probably have a missing person who went missing around the time frame that Nancy Guthrie disappeared. And I don't know. I think there would be a trail of that. What do you think?
Yes. Yeah, I think we have. You can't commit. There's no such thing as a perfect crime, and there's no, I'm trying to figure out what is the simplest explanation of what these facts tell us, and I really, it escapes me at this moment, other than it's just a simple abduction, and law enforcement has the answers, and our speculation isn't, what few facts and what we can determine is very little, because do I think that law enforcement will solve it? Absolutely. DNA, it's just a matter of time. And I think NANOS has alluded to that. But I think the answers will be here hopefully sooner than later. And I'm hoping within the next month or two, because other than that, if we don't get anything in the next month, we're, it's going to be looking bleak.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I've expressed concern, especially with the reactions of those inside the department, those, with the FBI and Kash Patel and his comments of using NANOS as a scapegoat, which, rightfully so or not, just wasn't a good look. It didn't scream confidence when he was throwing them under the bus. I would assume that even if you had there was a saying, right? When I was in law enforcement, if you had somebody that was screwing up, he's a mess up, but he's our mess up. You know what I mean? You don't let anybody else talk down or beat him up. You might do it, behind closed doors or whatever, but not in open public like that. And for them to just kind of say, hey man, if we don't solve this, is because of this, that guy's fault, kind of makes me believe that they're closer to not knowing than knowing. And that's scary.
Yeah, I understand the FBI releasing information of, hey, this is our best lead. This is an image of the guy now, but they say there's no timestamp. Do they have a date stamp? Are we even looking at the right night? Because if we're a day or two off, because full moon is not just one night. We have, phases are several days. And so that can change. I mean, and there's so many variables that we just don't know yet.
Well, I'm assuming it's the same night because of the plant stuff left behind and the video of him manipulating it. So I'm going to assume that it is the same night, because I thought about that too.
Yeah,
I thought about that too.
Answer that, yes, that is absolutely. I would agree.
Yeah. So we got a $9.99 fascinating discussion. Thank you. Nick and Cork, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. Put a couple of stars here. If you have any questions for us, we'll do a couple of Q&A here for a little bit, and then we'll call it a show. While everybody's putting in their questions, Steve, I kind of want to talk to you a little bit about a case out in that you've been covering and talking about with Timothy Dees. I brought it up to Chris McDonough's attention last night. Some folks were interested in it.
Appreciate that.
Yes, sir. So for those that are listening, kind of a little bit of backstory of who Timothy Dees was.
A young kid that had a lifelong friend, went to another town for a night out on the town, as young men do, and went down there. And of course, the orbit of friends that Timmy Dees had, is not the perfect world. I mean, we're talking about individuals that have histories of criminal activity, use of and having addictions, and having pretty well not the perfect child that we hope our children to be. But regardless, Timmy went off with some friends and never returned. And it was brought to my attention by family members, Barbara Hall and her sister, Marion got in contact with me and started looking into the case. And the storyline of Timmy coming up missing and his best friend who went with him to this Fredericktown to spend the weekend with him, his story doesn't line up with what the narrative is of what actually occurred and what we have evidence of. That his best friend laid down this narrative that, well, Timmy was under the influence of drugs, was paranoid, and I was just trying to help him and find him. And that I've never seen him since a certain date and time. I would never hurt him. His storyline has jumped from different stories, and that, that he's my best friend. I would never hurt him. And all the narratives and all the interviews, never once did he tell law enforcement that while Timmy was on 911 running and calling law enforcement to come help him, that his best friend never once said that, oh, while he's running and being paranoid, that I was threatening him. And we came up with evidence and supporting evidence. We have it in black and white of those threats occurring. And they've only come to light in the last few months. And we've presented this to law enforcement and to the prosecutors and even to the cold case unit that Barbara has been making contact with and trying to get it looked into with the cold case unit. And she's just been running up against a wall and getting no more attention. But it's a young man that, regardless of his life and drug habits and choices made, he did have a good job. He was part of a union, worked extremely hard, and had a mom and dad that loved him, and he loved them, and went on a trip and never returned. And it's a sad, sad story.
Definitely is. And there's so many weird caveats to it, that involve, and I'm not the one to say law enforcement or suspicious of anything, and I don't think law enforcement are involved in his death, but there's just some weird things like, law enforcement. So there was a potential use of a debit card at around 9 something in the morning after Timothy has disappeared. Now, the suspect that we or the person of interest that we're looking at, Timothy's best friend, he got arrested that morning, and his alibi is that he was in cuffs. The sheriffs and law enforcement have said, no, well, it couldn't have been him because he was arrested. It got to the point where they wanted to prove that he was arrested so bad that they sent a picture over, unbeknownst to them that the picture that they had showed 10 a.m., not 9:02. And so well after the use of the debit card, and then the sheriff, interestingly enough, and this is the weird thing about it, and I just found this out too, was that he had told Timothy's mom that that wasn't his jurisdiction, that he couldn't do anything. And maybe this was the chief, but it was one of them too. Mm-hmm. But they end up going and picking up the surveillance footage from the ATM, even though it wasn't their jurisdiction. And then it gets magically struck by lightning.
Well, not only the ATM video isn't available, but we only have still shots from the other cameras in the store.
That's
and
true.
We don't have the full video. So there's so much there. And the most striking thing to me about this is that his best friend saying that Timmy's paranoid. Well, are you really paranoid when you call law enforcement, say my best friend is chasing me, and then we find out that the best friend is threatening him? Is that really being paranoid, or is that just speaking the truth and I need help because my best friend's going to hurt me if I don't get help? And he just writes it off as Timmy was under some type of drug influence and reacting and becoming paranoid. If it's the truth, then it's not paranoid. It's just simply the truth.
Yeah. Oh, and that's not the only lightning strike. That was like one of 3 that destroyed evidence or footage or something.
Oh yeah.
In the last thing we'll talk about Timothy Dees, and I'm going to do a whole video extended on it again, was the fact that his buddy was messaging him and his means of messaging was through Facebook Messenger.
Yes.
And well, there's two things actually about it. One, supposedly he took off, but he tells people later that he had seen that Timothy was trying to sell his stuff on his Snapchat, which how would he know that unless he had his phone?
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. That's the first thing. And then number two was that, where was I going with that?
Well, this history
of
the
Facebook messages. Yeah. So he met the last message he sends Timothy is, "I'm going to beat your ass."
Yes.
And then he doesn't message him again. He gets locked up for a few like almost 2 months because of an unrelated warrant. And while there, he's like, they speak to him. He's like, I'm going to help find him. I can't wait till I get out so I can help find him. He gets out. And then when he gets out, he's being accused of this. I mean, he's even telling his sister, he's telling his family members, they're coming after me. And even at that point, he's not reaching out to Timmy saying, bro, they're coming after me. Where are you? Tell them you're okay, that you just ran off with this fake ID and stuff, or whatever the case may be. Just call in. You don't have to say anything. That way they can get off my back. Yeah. But he doesn't even attempt to.
Yeah. And that's the importance of knowing that we have this Facebook history log of thousands of contacts for months that Timmy and his best friend communicated daily for months, multiple times daily. Just in the month of February, it's close to 400 times. And so when you only have 28 days, do the math of how many times per day did we talk to each other. But then when Timmy goes missing, never once did we continue or attempt to locate him or find him or communicate. From the moment that threat was made, that ended all contact attempt. And why would you shut off your number one? Because I don't think if you're talking to somebody 20 or 30 times a day, that's more than a habit. That's a necessity, that this is our main way of communication. And we do this throughout our lives. You don't change and just instantly stop, because we have other examples in this same log of other people that contacted Timmy daily, and they continued looking for him. Mm-hmm. We only have 2 individuals that didn't continue that method of communication, and that's his best friend and his best friend's sister. They stopped that morning, never again to look or try to contact him on that through that Facebook app.
And the crazy thing about that, his sister and him recorded conversations of maybe perhaps her wanting to put the blame on somebody else for what happened to Timmy. So it's an interesting case. I want to re-go into it and bring you back on and really dive into it. I got a couple of questions. We got Don Spain coming in with $10 saying it's always great to see Steve putting in his expertise. I always agree. And then we have Mary Melbourne. Gruesome question, but if gloves got wet from blood, would a handle slip out of their hand, or would it be gripped better? Dolly handle being pushed or pulled? Well, does blood make gloves slippery?
I would say any type of liquid reduces friction. It doesn't matter. Any type of oil, blood, anything. I don't think that water has ever increased. You don't throw water down to increase your traction. If anything, you throw sand. You throw the opposite of water, and blood is whatever the ratio of liquid or water.
Yeah. So I agree. Well, Steve, this was very, very interesting. I think you did a lot of great work on this to kind of pinpoint the time frame in which the perpetrator was possibly outside there. Again, we don't know the exact time, but it's very, very compelling. And with
everything I have is after 2:00.
Yeah, everything that 2:00, 2:14. It is very compelling. If you guys are just catching in, I would recommend going back to the beginning, because we broke down the time frame and why it's important. But that's going to do it for us tonight. I want to thank you again, Steve, for joining us, and we'll catch you on the next one, my man.
All right.
All right, go check him out. Are you going to start doing your YouTube stuff anytime soon?
I've got a bunch of work coming up in the next month or two. I need to talk to you about anyway. But
Yes, sir.
and now with the foundation work of me going out and helping families, assisting them through the our nonprofit foundation, that I had to make choices of what was more important in helping these families. Took away. If I did YouTube stuff, it takes way too much time, and so I don't do as much YouTube now.
Gotcha. Well, I'll keep bringing you out of the woodwork to bring you out. Yes, sir. Well, you have a great night, everybody. I'll be on Jennifer Coffin-Dafford's channel probably in about 10-15 minutes. See you guys there. Peace out, everybody.